Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thank you for being here. Check out this map right here. Watch this map, remember this map, look at this map. We are going to get back to that map in just a second and make sense of it. In this segment, I want to talk about Chinese hard power and Chinese soft power and how they are using both to take over America right now as we speak. Most people will not understand what we're talking about in this segment. Most people aren't going to get it because they don't see and can't even fathom China's global ambitions. They don't think about it, have never thought about it, can't even understand it like you do. And the second thing is, once you realize that China wants to take over the world, then you got to consider how they've decided to take over the world. And they've decided to do it the long game by slowly infiltrating our institutions and making the world more dependent on them. Soft power and hard power. 99% of the country can't understand this, can't see this. I know that you can and you do. Let's first talk about Chinese soft power. I want to play a clip of Ashton Kutcher. Now, hold on. Before you be like, what? Every once in a while, Ashton Kutcher comes out with like this brilliant point or something. It's weird. But he's doing this interview and he's talking about his kids using social media and the rules that he and his wife have set out when it comes to social media. And he goes through all the old reasons why kids should not be using social media that we're all aware of, right? Like it's bad for your kids' mental health. It teaches them to become little narcissists. It causes depression because people are always comparing themselves to other people, right? All those arguments that we know against social media, especially for kids. The reason I limit all this stuff for my kids, I eliminate it, is because people in Silicon Valley don't let their kids use these technologies or use social media. The people making the social media don't let their kids use these social medias, right? But Ashton Kutcher takes it to the next level. He's talking in this clip about TikTok, which is the fastest growing social media platform. Here he is.
I see a massive regulatory battle on the horizon for a company like TikTok that is powered by ByteDance, which is one of the most powerful AI engines in the world in China.
Yeah.
And I think about if I'm China and I want to create a problem in that area of the world, specifically a naval problem in that area of the world, in the South China Sea, I would probably want to utilize TikTok in order to influence the minds of Americans in a anti-US propaganda, anti-Taiwanese propaganda effort in order to make any kind of war from the United States extraordinarily unpopular in order to defend the South China Sea.
So first of all, this is why I love locals.com, MikeSlater.locals.com, not controlled out of China or San Francisco, and there's no algorithm. We'll get to that again maybe another day. But what Ashton Kutcher here is talking about is Chinese psychological warfare deployed through social media against your children. I'll say it again. TikTok is Chinese psychological warfare campaign deployed through social media against your children. To most parents, TikTok is just this fun app where people dance, hee hee. But again, people who think that, they don't understand China's global ambitions. And then even if they did, they don't understand how China's doing it. But it makes perfect sense what they're doing. Because if they can control your kids' minds through an incredibly addictive social media app, and if they can control the minds of children, they control the country. We have an algorithm that's designed by people in Beijing who hate you. And they can expose your kids to whatever they want to expose your kids to. Now, I've talked about this to a couple of people before, and they're like, oh, I've been on TikTok and I don't see a bunch of Chinese propaganda. They don't need that. They don't need to preach communism to your kids. They don't need to turn your kid into a communist. They just need to inundate your kids with values and things that undermine American values, right? They don't need to teach your kid to love China. They just need to teach your kids to hate America. and to do all the things that lead to a further undermining of American strength. Trust me, the Chinese know exactly what they're doing. One more clip from Ashton Kutcher.
My sense as a fervent American is that it's getting extraordinarily dangerous for not just individuals, but for the country at large. And so my sense is that what social media is today is not what social media is going to be in 5 years. And so I will, if the trend line continues on the path that it's on today, my kids will not be on social media. If the trend line pivots, as I think it likely will, there's a chance that I will allow them to use it. And then the day will come where they're going to do what they want to do. And they'll be extraordinarily educated as to how people can manipulate the way you think.
Love that. Extraordinarily educated. Be careful who you're outsourcing the minds of your children to. People in San Francisco may be bad enough, but people in Beijing, you are truly letting people who hate you raise your children for a major portion of their life, all the time they spend on their phones. People who hate you putting messages and expectations in your child's brain. And yeah, of course, when they're older, they can decide, but they'll be extraordinarily educated about how easily it is for them to be manipulated. Right now, kids are not. They're not careful. They're not educated. And they are begging for guardrails from parents to protect them. So are you protecting them, or are you trusting China? That's soft power. The more that China can inject into your kid's brain to undermine their life and this country, the stronger they become. Relative so. Make sense? Cool. That's soft power. Now hard power. Go back to this map. All right, let's play the first one again here, gentlemen. This is one of the most important maps you can see right now. This is a map from the year 2000, countries that share a greater trade with the US or China. So every country that's blue trades more with America. I should say traded. This is back in 2000. Every country that's blue traded more with America than with China. Right? US is blue, China is red. You can see the entire map is blue. There's Cuba. You can see Cuba, a little bit of red. And then that's Paraguay in South America. I don't know why Paraguay traded more with China than us. I don't know. And then a dabble of countries in Africa, and then the countries all around China. That makes sense, right? They're just closest. That was the year 2000. This is today. Nearly all of South America, their biggest trading partner is China. All of Africa, all of the Middle East, all of Australia and the countries around Australia. India, the second biggest country in the world. And of course, all of Asia. Did I say all of Eastern Europe and Spain as well? All of these countries trade more with China than America, which means they're all influenced the most by China. We're at the point today, that's hard power. We're at the point today where when a world war breaks out with China, like it won't even, it'll be US versus the world, right? It won't be East versus West, or good guys versus bad guys, or Allied versus Axis. It's US versus the world. Maybe we'll have an ally with England or France, right? But every other country is going to be dependent on on China. Heck, we are dependent on China. Again, 97% of our antibiotics come from China. 97% of our antibiotics come from China. You look at percentage of global trade in 2000, US had 75% of global trade, China was 25%. Today, it's completely flipped. China has 75% and America has 25%. We can no longer flex our muscles around the world, at least not like we used to be able to. We are no longer, therefore, the main cultural influencer of the world. China is. And I would argue that that's even true here in America. China is our main cultural influencer in America. That's such a crazy sentence. The main cultural influencer in America is China. Just ask the NBA. Ask Nike, Apple, Disney. all the Hollywood movie studios owned by Chinese companies. We did not export our values to China like we hoped. They exported their values to us. It's very bad. That's soft power. That's hard power. Now, we could end there. We're going to go next level. You ready? If you want to end the segment right there, that's totally fine. You can just take that, put a little bow on it. Very good. I got 2 minutes here. Let's go next level here. I want to toss one more thing your way to consider. This is our, every quarter friendly reminder of what's right around the corner with artificial intelligence in your brain. A couple months ago, we talked about Neuralink. It's an Elon Musk company. Months ago, they released the video, we have it here, of this monkey that has a microchip in his brain that can control the video game with his brain. He's not moving his hand, there's no joystick, he's just sitting there. And that's the beginning when he is using a joystick, and then at the end of the video, he's not using a joystick, and the computer is moving just with his brain. Okay? So you just think, and it happens on the screen. The goal here, Elon Musk says, is that the greatest technological impediment is the speed of your thumbs. Think about it. You want to send a text, you got to pull out your phone, you got to swipe up, unlock the phone. Okay. Hey, Charlie, what time do you, you, stupid autocorrect, want to, right? It takes forever. So Elon Musk looks at it and he's like, well, let's just get rid of thumbs. You don't need thumbs anymore. Okay, so voice text. Nah, that still takes too long. What if you just think it and it goes right to your phone? Well, he's like, well, who needs phones? What if you just think it and it goes to somebody else's brain? What if everybody just had a computer chip in their brain and we connected through the internet, or we connect to each other's brains through the internet? That's Neuralink. That's the point of it. Everyone has a microchip in their brain and communicates with each other through their brains. And it's just, hey, you just think, hey, Charlie, we want to get dinner tonight? Boom, and he gets it. It's connected to his brain. No phone, no middleman of a phone, no thumbs, no texting. It's just sent. And you're thinking, oh, this is crazy, Slater. No, who's going to put a microchip in their brain? I don't know. Almost everyone. There's no question that people will sign up for this. Because they'll pitch it. Well, I'll tell you how they'll pitch it in just a second here. Of course, people are going to sign up for this. Now, what's the problem with this? This is Raphael Yuste. He's a neuroscience professor at Columbia University. He said the tech giants are plowing colossal sums of money into this that will replace smartphones and just connect everyone's brain to the internet. He said Facebook is busy working on fusing the brains with computers. When you hear propaganda, here's the problem. When you hear here's the problem. When you hear propaganda or read your news feed or hear someone's opinion, you always know that it's external to you. It's coming to you through your senses, and you're digesting that information, and you may accept it or you may not, but you always know it's external, right? So if I'm watching some video, I'm seeing it with my eyes, I'm hearing it with my ears, but it's something that's over there, and I'm choosing to bring it into me. But it's here. It's out here first, and I bring it in. The problem with this is, one of the problems is, it goes right to your brain. You won't be able to distinguish, people won't be able to distinguish what is an external thing, like what's their thought and what's someone else's thought. That's the point. They won't be able to distinguish what's their thought or what someone else's thought. It just goes right to your brain. It's there. And the way people are going to sign up for this is because it's always framed, just like it always is, as helping people and helping you. This is from this article in The Sun. It says that governments are racing to develop brain technology that could unlock ways of curing horrible diseases and conditions that blight many people or their loved ones. So you get this microchip. Oh, no, we're not tracking you. We're not following you. We're not going to put information in your head. No. It's to monitor your blood pressure. It's to detect early signs of stroke. It's going to save your life. Oh, it can detect early Alzheimer's. You can beat Alzheimer's with this. It's just a little tiny computer chip in your brain. No big deal. That's how they're going to pitch it, and that's why people are going to do it. And once they do that, you're connected to the internet. Who controls the internet? Then the Chinese propaganda could just be beamed right into your brain. Anyway, I'll leave that there. You can do what you want with it. Either way, I hope you, just like Ashton Kutcher, are making your kids extraordinarily educated as to the ways that people can manipulate the way they think. Now, maybe there's a lot to despair in this segment. Don't despair. I almost look at this as good news, because the worse things get, the greater the need there is for righteous and strong Americans to step up. And I know that you are just the man and woman for the job. Another friendly reminder, while we still can, download while you still can. Actively resist what San Francisco and Beijing are feeding you everywhere else. We have the First TV app. Why is it called the First? Because we believe in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, hence the First TV. It's a free download. Just search for it in the App Store. True story. Mike Slater. Coming up next, we'll talk about the American Academy of Pediatrics and how they have beclowned themselves yet again. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, trust the experts, they say. Trust the experts who routinely beclown themselves over and over and over again. And we are supposed to continue to go back and trust them, even after they've completely failed without repentance. I don't think so. This is the American Academy of Pediatrics. They just came out with their guidance that all kids need to be masked in school this year. All kids, vaccinated or not, over the age of 2. A 2-year-old needs to be masked. Are you kidding me? I'm out of words. We've talked for hours and hours and hours on the radio show, the TV show. I'm out of words to describe how insane this is. There's absolutely zero basis in medicine or science for this ridiculous guidance. Now, I would gladly take this time to debunk any study that the American Academy of Pediatrics put out that caused them to come to their conclusion. I would love to take the time to debunk that study, but they did not include any study. I can't debunk anything because they never bunked. If they don't bunk, I can't debunk. So what are we doing? They didn't put a single study on their website and their guidelines and their press release, nothing that backs up how they came to their conclusion. So the only thing I am left with is telling you who the American Academy of Pediatrics are. You with me? I would much prefer to go through the science. If they presented some science, I would go through the science and we would talk about the study. They didn't do that. So what am I to do? Blindly take their word for it? You kidding me? We're not going to do that. I'm just going to give you a little reminder about who the American Academy of Pediatrics are and who these people stand for. Back in March of this year, this is one of their press releases. American Academy of Pediatrics speaks out against bills harming transgender youth. Oh my goodness. I also would like to speak out against bills that harm transgender youth. I don't want to harm anyone. What bills were there that were, I don't know, like putting kids in jail or whatever? I would be against it as well. Here's what they were talking about. Several state legislatures have introduced bills that would prohibit gender-affirming care for gender-diverse and transgender youth, and would forbid transgender youth from participating on sports teams according to their gender identity. These bills are dangerous, they say. So, hold on. Not letting a boy compete in a women's sport is dangerous. And I love this line. The American Academy of Pediatrics has long been on the record in support of affirmative care for transgender children through our clinical policy. What is affirmative care? Affirmative care is if a boy says they're a girl, we affirm that. And now we're going to surgically make you a girl. So this is a group of pediatricians. So the people who came up with your mask mandate, follow me here, right? The people who came up with the latest mask guidelines is the same group of people who support cutting off genitals and removing breasts in teenagers. We did a story the other day on the radio show. I don't think we did it here. It was a study of LA Children's Hospital in 2016. It's 5 years ago. They performed dozens of mastectomies on otherwise perfectly physically healthy girls as young as 13. 13! I read the other day of a nurse who was a part of 2 mastectomies on 13-year-old girls in one day. There are children's hospitals across the country. Children's hospitals across the country. You should look into see if your children's hospital has a gender-affirming care center. They probably do now. Okay, that study I shared about dozens in LA hospitals 5 years ago. Could you fathom what they're doing today? So this is the American Academy of Pediatrics. They're a far left group. I don't even know. What do you want to call a group of doctors who are for this crazy extreme surgery that's never been done before on children? Right? I don't know. What do you want to call them? You want to call them far left? I don't even know what you want to call them. But it's a shocker that they're also falling in line with the Democrats' policies on masks. The reason it's such a shame is because no one knows that. Unless you're watching this right now, no one knows the American Academy of Pediatrics and who they really are and what they really stand for. No one knows that they're a hack group. Most people just hear the name. It sounds fancy. American Academy of Pediatrics. Oh, wait. Most people most sheep just follow these groups with fancy authoritative titles without questioning the actual science. Most people who read the headline don't actually read the studies or read the actual guidelines that they put out that have no footnotes, no citation, no studies, no data, no numbers, nothing in it. There's also a group called the American College of Pediatricians. And they're on the right. And again, if by on the right you mean against surgery for 13-year-olds, right? If that's the far right position, we're against removing this uterus in a girl. Oh, pretty far right over there. We know, because they didn't give you any numbers, I'll give you numbers. 335 people below the age of 18 have died from COVID. That's according to the CDC. 335 people under the age of 18. Over 800 have died from pneumonia. So we're going to mask up 70 million people because 335 have died, and who knows what other complications they had that led to their actual death. Maybe COVID had nothing to do with it. That is nothing could be more insane than that. One of the justifications from the American Academy of Pediatrics was this. One of the justifications that one of their bullet points as to why we need to keep masking up. An added benefit of universal masking is protection of students and staff against other respiratory illnesses that would take time away from school. Now all of a sudden they're very concerned about taking time away from school. But what they're saying here is that this is just a thing we do now. Wear masks. You just do it for other respiratory illnesses. We just wear masks now. I don't want to get sick. You don't ever want to get sick. But does that even work? American Academy of Pediatrics? Got any numbers on that? I'll share this with you about masks. This is from the Telegraph in England, not a far-right newspaper. They quoted a guy who said that an imperfect analogy for masks when it comes to blocking the virus would be imagine firing marbles at building scaffolding. Yes, some might hit a pole and bounce back, but most are just going to fly right through. This guy called them comfort blankets. Now you're saying, oh, well, what doctor is this? Well, he's a doctor, but he's a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering. And you're thinking, well, what does this guy know? He's not a doctor. He's not a real a medical doctor. This guy's like, yeah. Medical doctors don't understand this. Oh, listen, medical doctors, when it comes to what happens to the body once COVID gets in the body, that's medical doctors' domain. But he says doctors are unable to comprehend the minuscule elements at play. That's this man's specialty. He said a COVID particle is 100 nanometers. Okay, we can't fathom how tiny that is. He says material gaps in surgical masks are up to 1,000 times that size. 1,000 times bigger. than virus particles. Cloth masks can be 500,000 times. The gaps, are you with me? The gaps inside the material. I mean, to us, obviously, it looks like it's one piece of material, but it's not. The gaps, if you get down to the nanometer level, are 500,000 times bigger than the size of a virus particle. So to put that into perspective, because we can't, if you're 6 feet tall, imagine looking at a building that's 500,000 times taller than you. You can't. That's 3 million feet tall. That's 3 million feet tall building. That's 2,400 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. So you're the virus particle. And the 2,400 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other is the gap in a cloth mask. The expert that my local newspaper in San Diego quoted said, as long as kids are not vaccinated, masks are critical in schools. Absolutely critical. But no one can ever tell me why. This is in France. France coming out with their vaccine passports. And these are government numbers. Government has said that 137 marches took place across the country this weekend with 114,000 people, 18,000 people in Paris. Get ready to do the same because vaccine passports are coming to America as well. Let me do the very quick of this because we've got some great guests coming up next. My stance on vaccine, it's not tribal, it's not Republican or Democrat. It's a purely scientific and medical risk analysis based on your age. I've said this from the jump. If you're older, get the vaccine. If you're middle-aged, I don't care, do whatever you want. If you're younger, don't get it. And if you think about getting anywhere near my children with this vaccine, you need to go to the hospital and get your head checked because you've lost your mind. It's all based on age. Yeah, maybe there's a couple other health factors that a very, very small number of people need to also consider when they think about getting it. But that's it. That's your value. If you want to get it, go get it. But don't act like conservatives are such idiots for being vaccine hesitant, because really, who was vaccine hesitant first? It's Kamala and Joe Biden. So listen, I wish I could say trust the experts, but you can't. They've beclowned themselves too many times. It's the height of narcissism to think that they think we could still trust them. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. You hear a lot of people say we're more divided now than ever before. I think the Civil War, we were pretty divided, but certainly more divided than any time in my lifetime. I was just having this conversation with a friend the other day about if there was another type of September 11th type attack, would we unite again, even after being attacked? Or have things changed so much that Black Lives Matter would immediately come out and blame America for the, right? And would we would never even have that moment of unity even after common attack? I fear that may be the case. I want to talk about the history of this division and where we go from here. Old friend of mine, Tom Del Picaro, he's the chairman of RescueCalifornia.org, and he's got a book called The Divided Era, How We Got Here and the Key to America's Reconciliation. Tom, how are you, brother?
Slater, always good to see you. And yeah, you're right. This division is growing, and I'm glad you brought out the Civil War, where we decided our differences with guns, not ballots. But it's getting pretty dicey out there, and for the usual reasons. I mean, historically, the left has always sold socialism and big government as a cure to the evils. It doesn't sell on its own merits. It just blackens the opposition and says, well, either through class warfare that the rich are robbing the poor, or through some sort of racial fight or nationalistic fight, everything is they're bad, bring us in, and then they push their big government programs.
Give me some history of that. How far back does that theme go of rich and poor?
Really to the beginning of time. If you look at the end of the Greek Republic in the 5th century BC, 4th century, and then into the 3rd century, class warfare was a big deal. By the end, Isocrates, who used to be revered throughout that country, said that when he was a child, becoming rich, working hard and becoming rich was an ideal, but at the end it was the enemy. And he surmised that the rich hated the poor so much they would rather throw their jewels into the sea, and the poor hated the rich so much that they would rather just burn it down than even redistribute it. But what wound up happening in that huge class warfare fight was the left, what we would know today as the left, eventually took over the assembly, started voting the coffers of the rich into the state coffers, and the Civil War, the class Civil War, got out of control. There was not only theft, but the killing of the rich. And Greece looked internally, fought itself, and didn't pay attention to the outside world. Tell me if you think this sounds familiar. And eventually Philip of Macedon came in and conquered it, and the rich were relieved. They preferred his order through dictatorship to the chaos of the left and redistribution and the vicious class warfare that was going on. I cover that, by the way, in chapter 10 of the book.
That is so fascinating.
Right? And so what is new is very, very old. Think of the end of the Roman Republic when socialism was starting to take hold. You had assassinations of the Gracchi brothers who would be considered today modern day socialists, who wanted, bread and circuses, wanted to give away tax and spend kind of thing. And the chaos that brought, democracy, Plato used to talk about democracy ends in chaos and turns to dictatorship, centralized government. You don't need to have the analogy isn't necessarily that somebody comes in and replaces the Constitution overnight, but that as government centralized, this is what's happening today. Imagine a world where you are forced by law to take a vaccine that's not even approved by the FDA. I mean, these are things that our founders never would have imagined. And so at the end of the Roman Republic, that chaos was replaced with, and the empire, an imperial, a dictatorship, and order was restored. And so, the first rule of freedom is that it has to be bounded. It has to have some sense of order. If it gets out of control, and look, what do you see in the streets today of Portland? No control whatsoever. That's happening in a lot of places. So I'm not saying this is happening overnight, but I'm going to tell you a lot of things are happening I never thought I'd see in my lifetime.
It's interesting. This goes back to one of Jesse Kelly, one of our other hosts' thoughts that a real dictator is coming. Like the left thinks Trump was a dictator. Like, give me a break. But a real one will come. And are you suggesting that it would be in the name of order and peace and stability because things are too chaotic?
Well, think about it. Didn't they say about Trump that America and what he's doing is evil and favoring the rich, and he's acting out of control? We need someone who will unify us. That's always the sale. The sale is never socialism works and you're going to be richer, except to the extent that we'll tax the rich and give it away to you. What they say is the other guy is bad, that America is no longer a good place, on and on and on. And then they slip in. And something very interesting, a dynamic, which I talk about with the Democrats today, and this might sound a little controversial at first, but it's really true. They actually don't care as much about winning elections as getting government programs put in place. And what I mean by that is, take where they are right now. You would think with a 50-50 Senate and a bare margin in the House that they would govern from the center, build consensus, and try and move on, right? And gain seats that way. They're pushing every big program because they know when they get out of office, the program won't get repealed. It'll be there. They'll eventually get back to office. Think of Obamacare. What a huge, big program that they have in place, Mike. Is it going away? No.
Never.
So maybe they go out of office again. So they get into office, they rush these programs, they get into place. Maybe they get thrown out because they went too far, but the program stays. That's the socialist plan.
Okay, I got two questions. We got time for two questions. So when the left says, "Oh, how do I word this?" They'll spin it back. Okay, they'll spin it back because we will say, "Oh, you lefties, you're all about dividing." But they come back and they say that about you, Tom. They say, "Oh,
yes.
Look at you talking about the left and how they are doing this and you're ruining them. They're ruining America." So they'll say you're dividing. What do you say to that?
Yeah. Well, opinions don't divide, but government programs do. And that's really at the heart of my book. The more government decides, the more it divides. Every government decision picks a winner and a loser and someone to pay for it. So mathematically, as governments grow, we become free republics/democracies grow more divided. If you think about it, at the start of our country, we were very divided over the Constitution. It was a bitter fight. Over my shoulder here is a book with Patrick Henry, who hated the Constitution, centralization of the Constitution so much that he said if Madison ever runs for office, there'll be rivulets of blood in the street. But after the Constitution was adopted, and I cover this in the book, people went back to their lives. You may not even see government. You could live in Western Tennessee and maybe never see government for a year or two or three. But now everything you do, the shirt you wear, the gas you use, the car, everything is regulated. You can't get away from government. So the reality is that as government approaches half the U.S. economy, Jefferson's time, it was 2%. Now it's getting close. When you throw in regulations, it's over half the economy. You can't get away from it. And so we're constantly at each other's throats. So the Democrats can say that, I'm criticizing the left. But at the end of the day, the march of government, if you support politicians growing government, you support the division you decry.
Tom, we got to run. Let's do it again. The Divided Era.
Right.
How We Got Here, Key to America's Reconciliation. Go buy the book and rescuecalifornia.org. Thanks, Tom.
All right, take care. See you soon.
Always good to talk to you, man. We'll talk about the worst part about all this is government growing and we know inflation. Biden's solution to the inflation is more government spending and more programs. Just doubling down on the thing that caused the problem in the first place. We're doomed. Talk with an expert about that next. Spread the word. Hey, Senator Crusaders, obviously inflation is a massive issue right now. People are starting to feel it, but nothing like what is to come. And the media is going to do the best they can to downplay and be like, "Oh, no, it's no big deal. It's not that bad. It's still fine. And it's temporary little tiny things here and there." Here's what Joe Biden said about it yesterday.
We've seen some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation. But that's not our view. Our experts believe, and the data shows, that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and are expected to be temporary.
Love that. But just price increases, just little price increases. And that's not our view, of course. Wayne Cruz is here, Vice President for Policy and Senior Fellow at the wonderful Competitive Enterprise Institute. Wayne, how are you, sir?
Doing great. Great to be with you. Appreciate you having us on to talk.
Thank you. Yeah, no, of course. It's a huge problem. And I don't think people have even begun to wrap their head around what is to come with this. What's your view on inflation?
Well, I'll tell you, we do I think the federal government just this past year spent $6 trillion, and we're on track to do that again this year when you count in place the new spending coming from COVID. But I think when we look at the federal spending state, we're still not capturing all that the federal government is doing. It's the regulatory state, to me, that is such a factor in terms of inhibiting the economy, interfering with jobs and commerce and business growth, and ends up restricting supply. You've got your federal regulations in environment, health and safety, banking, education, on down the board. We do this report every year called 10,000 Commandments, surveying these things. And I'll tell you, in the wake of the COVID spending, the new Biden triad of spending, you've got the jobs program, you've got the rescue plan that's already passed. The jobs program is being debated this week as the Congress is trying to decide on an infrastructure package. I think it's a horrible idea for Republicans to try to do a deal on infrastructure right now. It's going to be highly regulatory, highly interference. It's going to also exacerbate the kind of inflation problems you're talking about. But they're not stopping there, because there's the human infrastructure that is yet to come in Biden's American Families Plan. So when he talks about inflation or government interference in the economy not having much of an effect, we haven't seen anything this extraordinary in terms of government intervention, both in spending and on the regulatory side in the wake of COVID. So I think, in a way, inflation is the least of our worries.
Amazing. And I never thought before about how regulation causes inflation. So you're saying, if I can spell it out, regulation makes it harder for businesses to provide products,
Sure.
makes for a smaller supply, therefore a higher price. Inflation goes up. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I never thought of that. Can you help me quantify it, or can you give me an example of this at play and maybe some of the more recent things that Biden has done?
Yeah, well, we do in this report every year. If the federal government had been normally spending $4 trillion a year, and this past year with COVID, $6 trillion, we had always tabulated the hidden tax of regulation in this report we do called 10,000 Commandments. And believe it or not, the cost of regulations alone are at least $2 trillion. I think there are a lot more than that. There are other estimates you can find that put it way above even the placeholder that I like to use, because I try to incorporate the government's own numbers in terms of its cost-benefit analyses and so forth in terms of the regulatory state. But $2 trillion a year, if that's the benchmark for the cost of regulation on top of federal spending, that's more than the individual income tax and the corporate income tax combined. So that's why I think if we're missing the regulatory state or the hidden tax of regulation, in a way, we're missing the biggest part of what the federal government is doing. Because I really think now, government is so large now. We debate the administrative state and the regulators, but I'll tell you, in the wake of the COVID actions last year, the Families First Act, the CARES Act, and all those sorts of things, with the interventions in housing markets, with the moratoria on evictions and things like that, things even supported by Republicans. The spending side of things is so big that you're expanding the government before these programs even trickle down to the regulators who start writing rules and regulations.
Wow.
And it's in a way, it's kind of worse than that, Mike, because you think about it this way: there are a few dozen laws that Congress passes every year. Meanwhile, agencies put out over 3,000 regulations. So I call that the unconstitutionality index. There's at least 19 times as many rules and regulations coming out as there are laws from the congressman and the president when he signs laws. But there's a lot more than that too. There's guidance documents that the agencies are putting out. We took to calling these regulatory dark matter, and you saw it with the bathroom orders from 3 years ago from the Department of Justice, Department of Education. You see those on the tech side of things. In terms of the Labor Department, contractor rules and franchising rules and things like that just came as memoranda out of the government. Whether a telephone gets regulated for safety in a car by NHTSA, all these things are being done just by the agencies putting out guidance documents. They do notices, memoranda, circulars, bulletins, blog posts.
All the CDC masks, all the CDC mask stuff is just a guideline as well. Wayne, I hate, we got to run, but thanks for overwhelming me. But giving us a true scope of what's going on. We need to know it. Competitive Enterprise Institute. Thanks for all the work you do there, Wayne.
You bet. My pleasure.
Sorry to cut you off here, man. Yeah. Listen, we may not have a dictator in America, but it's going to come through a massive state and a huge, massive government, which is growing like we've never seen before. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. See you tomorrow.